All right. Hi, everyone. How are you? Welcome to APPS126, which is databases. Thank you both for joining. My name is Sam McLean, and this is the first virtual class, right? So let's start off with, let me introduce myself. First, again, my name is Sam McLean, and I've been working at Independence University for about 2 years. I've taught a wide variety of things, from APPS 101 to APPS 126, which is this course, all the way up to a lot of the programming and database style courses. When I'm not teaching, which I enjoy and I love teaching, I also work for the Department of Defense. I'm a Navy contractor on the MSC project. I do a lot of the Oracle or database application work. So if this is something you like going forward, if you're towards the end of the course and you say, hey, I like working in databases, I like this is cool. Let me tell me how much you like it so that I can probably put you in touch with the right people, or I can help you myself get you ready and maybe get you a job in this field. So what we're going to do over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Access. You're going to have some discussions, some assignments, and some assessments that correlate to Microsoft Access. So in these live sessions, what I like to do is I have a slideshow that I like to show and I like to go through. Then I follow that up with walking through the assignment for the course. And then if we have time, I like to go into some videos that kind of help solidify some of those points that I covered in the lecture and in the assignment. If at any point in time over the next couple of hours you have a question, feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask. Or if you like to type it into the chat, you're more than welcome to. Again, this is a free open classroom, so if you have a question, just ask. So let's start off with the basic learning objectives. I do these each week during my live sessions. Again, I always like to talk about the discussions, the daily checkpoints, the assignment, and the assessment for the week. First off is the discussion. I like to mention that you have at least 150 words and at least one citation, and that's due by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. Then we go into your daily checkpoints. Your daily checkpoints, like they probably told you in APPS 101 and CSS 101 and your other courses, that they are quick, easy 5 points to help you stay on track. And I recommend doing those because they're quick, easy 5 points of extra credit. We'll also go through the assignment for this week, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the assessment at the end. I always like to include my instructor bio. It's in the syllabus if you have questions, but then again, it's also here if you want to take a screenshot or write that down. I do accept Skype and phone calls. The phone number also receives text messages, so you can text me if you need to. And all three of those forms of communication go straight to my cell phone, which I usually have on me 24 hours a day. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about me. So I told you I work for the Department of Defense. I'm a contractor through U.S. Information Technologies, which is based out of Chantilly, Virginia. And when I'm not teaching or working, I thoroughly enjoy going to my alma mater's football games, which is University of South Carolina. And when I'm not there, I enjoy spending time with friends and family and working in my reef aquarium. I have about a 120-gallon reef, and I enjoy playing around with that. So, talked a little bit about the discussions really quickly, the what, the why, the how, and the when. I told you about the when. It's due 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday. The why is essentially the discussion questions are designed for us or for you to demonstrate your knowledge and understanding of that week's material. So let's start off by talking about relational databases and understanding what a relational database is. So let me start off by asking this specific question. Who needs a database? Or what is a database? And who needs it? I'll give you a minute to think about that.
Basically, anybody who's keeping track of statistics, customers, inventory, anything like that.
You're absolutely right. Anybody who needs to keep track of inventory or statistics or any sort of data for that matter, they have to have access to a database. What about large e-commerce companies? Do they need access to a database? When I say e-commerce, I mean like Amazon, eBay, Best Buy.
Well, I mean, Best Buy usually carries their own inventory. Amazon, a lot of their inventory is through subsidiaries or through individuals selling, just like eBay. Yeah, they do require databases, if nothing else, to just record and keep track of transactions.
You're absolutely correct. That's what I was looking for, was the transactional piece. They may or may not keep track of who sold it. They may not keep track of what the item was, but they do keep track of the transaction, how much it was for, maybe the product ID number so that they can look it up later, maybe some basic information about the seller or the buyer. So yeah, you've hit both points. Very good, thanks. So the keys to this week are, we're going to talk about understanding relational databases. We're going to talk about how to open one, how to create one, how to insert data, how to edit that data. And then we're going to go into how to create a table, what a primary key is, and we'll talk about that later, how to relate two tables together and what that's called, and then we'll go into printing a data sheet. Before we even get into talking about relational databases, have either of you worked in Microsoft Access before?
I did a little bit in some of the jobs that I've had, just small things like keeping track of inventory, keeping track of waste. Whenever I did food service industry management, whenever I was managing tax firms, I did some databasing, but nothing as far as to building a database or programming a database, just entering data into the database and then retrieving the data later.
Okay. Well, then that's good that you've had that experience, because using Microsoft Access beforehand certainly gives you a nice foundation. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and build on that foundation. We're going to take what you know as far as how to update and insert information or delete, and then we're going to add on to that. We're going to show you how to create one from scratch, how to figure out what needs to be in there as far as the objects go. We're going to talk a little bit about how each table is related to each other and how we can insert, how we can update, delete, and things of that nature. So if you've never worked on it, and for those who are going to be watching in the recorded session later on, if you've never used Microsoft Access before, don't worry about it. We're going to start from the ground up. And for those of you who have, some of it may be repetitive, some of it may be that you've heard it before, but just bear with me because we'll keep going. And by the end of it, everybody's going to be able to create a database, create tables, create reports, create forms, and queries. All right, so let's talk about understanding relational databases. what exactly is a relational database? All a relational database is, if you break it down into pure simple terms, is a list of information or interrelated information that's put together in one place. Let's think of it in terms of, before we even go into talking about what a table is, or before we even go and talk about what a column or a row is, let's put it into a whole different perspective. Let's think about it in terms of objects and attributes. And let's expound upon that really quickly. If I told you that a database table or a database object is what we consider to be a person, place, thing, or idea. Basically, it's a noun. Expanding on that a little bit, talking about how it's a noun, let's say it is a person. The object of the database is a person. How would you describe a person? What are some attributes or some characteristics that you would describe a generic person? And those are what we call attributes, or the adjectives to describe that person. What are some ways you would describe a basic person?
Well, it depends on who I'm talking about. You
Let,
can
let's,
words like
let's not go that deep. Let's just say just a male or female.
male, female. Let's see, ethnic group.
Okay.
That's about all I can think about, as far as completely generic.
Okay. So let's do this real quick. All right. Can everyone see the whiteboard? Yep. Okay. So let's go, and this is going to be difficult for me. Let's say text. Sometimes it's easy to work with, sometimes it's not. Okay. There we go. So let's say an object, right? And I'm horrible at writing this, so please bear with me. Actually, let's not do it that way. Let's do this. This is much easier. I'm just going to open Microsoft Word. Okay, so we have an object. And that object is going to be a what? We're going to call that a person. So what are some things that we can use to make up a person? You mentioned ethnicity. So let's go a little bit farther. Let's say gender, male or female, right? What else can describe a person? You have male, female, gender. What about first name? Last name. You see where I'm starting to go with this? If I had to describe a specific person, I could tell you their gender, I could tell you their first, last name, their middle name. What else could I say?
We could put in address.
Address, correct.
Contact or phone number, email address.
Yep, phone number. You're on the right track. Phone number, email. Let's go back up to address real quick because there's a couple more we have to add there. The city, the state, the zip code, So their phone number, their email, their gender. What else? How would I describe a person? How would I describe a person whose first name is John, last name Smith, and I have 3 of them? How could I identify that person? How about using their social security number? If it's in the US.
Could also put driver's license number.
Okay, you could do that. You could do driver. I've actually never heard anybody say that one before. That's a good one. So if you put their number, you'd have to put their state, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Most likely.
Which we already have up here by under city.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, so we've got a nice little list of what we constitute as a person. Now we could also add in one more thing, which is date of birth. We could add in their date of birth. We could give them the social, their first, last, and middle name. We could give their address, their city, their state, their zip, phone number, email, driver's license. All of that makes up what we consider to be, in high regard or in large majority, a person. Does that make sense? And we're purely talking about in terms of objects. We're not talking about in terms of a table just yet. Let's do one more. A car. What are some characteristics of a car?
Make, model, year.
Okay, so we've got make, model, year, what else?
Engine size.
Engine, let's say type.
See, I mean, I'm thinking of whenever I have to call for a part for my car, you know, there's the make, model, year, engine type, the size, the
Color.
does it have anti-brakes and all that good stuff?
Okay, so
the features.
okay, so let's do brakes. Let's go with, how about the VIN number?
Mm-hmm.
All of that makes up, in large majority, a car, right? So we now have a list of a person. We now have a list of a car. All we would have to do now is take this information and give it to your friends or family or a business and say, fill out this information with at least 10 people and at least 10 cars, right? You could say, okay, now I have 10 people. I now have their first name, last name, middle name, their address, city, state, zip, social, their email and phone number, their driver's license and date of birth. I have 10 of those. And then you can also add in the cars that they drive. You see, you understand what I'm saying? You can, for every 10 people you add in the persons, in persons, you can actually add their car. Now, granted, some people may overlap and they may have the exact same car. The only difference might be is the VIN number. But nevertheless, it would be a different car.
Well, that's what dealerships use to, they use a database similar to this whenever a new car comes out. Like when the new 2017 Camaros came out, they used a spreadsheet at our local dealership, a database, to see who normally buys the sports cars, who how often they purchase them, and whenever it comes, it would populate names and addresses and phone numbers of people who were normally have bought, say, a car every 2 years and normally buys the Camaro, to send them out a publication to let them know, hey, we're getting a new Camaro on this date, come by and look at it.
That would be interesting. I haven't owned a Camaro in 10 years, but I'd love to. But that's beside the point. That's a good thing to say, though, because that actually correlates directly with how I wanted to set up the course for this week. I wanted to talk about how we can interrelate these two particular objects together. Now, I said a little while ago that we weren't even going to deal with tables just yet, because that's a foreign concept. But what's not a foreign concept is talking about an object. And an object can be a person, it can be a car, it can be a vacation spot, it can be inventory list. The list can go on and on and on. What I wanted you to do was to get it in the rhythm and the idea and the process of thinking about an object in an abstract way and just notating everything that you would use to describe that object. Does that make sense? So now that we have these objects and we have the attributes that are attached to those objects, we can go a step farther and say an object is what we call a functional design. You have what you call a functional design, and you have what you call a conceptual design. The way this works, essentially, is this is what we would call a conceptual design, where you wouldn't necessarily have this related to the database itself, but you could take this information and create multiple objects or multiple ideas off of it. So let's take this and let's flip this and let's talk a little bit about tables. An object is technically considered a table, if you haven't already guessed that. So when I say I have an object of a person, I technically am saying I have a person table. That table can list many different things. It can list everything that we've got right here to make up a person. And the same with a car. We can have a car table with a list of all different types of cars. Let's go a step farther. There are some advantages, and I jumped in relatively quickly. There are some advantages of using Microsoft Access. I'm going to take a step back. The reason you would use Microsoft Access over, say, Microsoft Excel is the data is more secure. The data entry is extremely fast. It minimizes what we call duplicate data, and it increases the accuracy and consistency of which you input data. Before desktop applications or before desktop databases or industry enterprise level database systems, relational database systems, we had different styles of databases. We had what we call a hierarchical database, a flat file database. And the differences between the flat file and the hierarchical and the relational database, which is what we'll be covering, is the one thing that the relational database had over the other two, albeit they are databases, is it allowed It allows for easy data entry, faster data entry. It minimizes duplication, and it increases accuracy. If you're using flat files to store database information, you can do that, and it works well. It's just it doesn't lend itself to being terribly accurate. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about when I say flat file, what I mean by that is a text file, a Excel spreadsheet, a comma separated value, a tab separated value, spreadsheet. All of those are what we consider flat files because they are linear in nature, and you can duplicate the data multiple times. It allows you to store the data, but it doesn't allow for redundancy checks. It's very primitive. And that's where Microsoft Access and SQL Server and all of the other ones come into play. They allow us to add another layer to our system. Although it adds complexity, it also adds a layer of simplicity because it takes us out of the equation as far as making errors. So some of the differences between Excel and Access are, one is the layout. Access has more of a natural tabular style layout, is where Excel has I'll be honest with you, they have closely the same style set up when it comes to a layout as far as data entry. The difference is the difference for Access is it allows for a form to be put on top of it, where you see sort of like a web form where you fill out your first name, last name, city, state, all that stuff. It allows for the user not to have to see all of the garbage behind the scenes, but it allows to have a little more pretty picture on the front end. The storage differences between Access and Excel are huge. Microsoft Access allows you to have up to 2 gigabytes worth of data records in one single file, is where Microsoft Excel only allows up to about 65,000 records per data sheet. And now you can have multiple data sheets, but you'll have to flip through those data sheets to figure out where you're at in your system. Microsoft Access allows you to take it a step farther. And while you can link the sheets in Excel, Microsoft Access allows us to link or join or add a relationship to multiple tables to add that layer of complexity. So let's go in and let's talk about opening a database, and let's start working a little bit. And then I want to show a short 4-minute video that'll kind of solidify some of these points. So what I'm going to do first is go to Start. I'm going to go to All Apps. Now I'm using Access 2016. If you have Access 2013 or 2010, that's completely fine. I do recommend or ask that when you start your assignment and your assessment for the weeks, let me know in the comments when you submit your assignment which version you have, because that'll play a key role later on in the course, because when we get to reports, 2010 doesn't have a section or a theme that 2013 and 2016 does have. It's not that I'm going to take off points because you're using 2010. It's I want to know that so that I can overlook it if necessary, or give you some other means of which to add a theme to your system to get the most out of it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up Microsoft Access 2016. And if you've never seen 2016 before, it looks relatively the same as 2013 if you've used that before. Slight differences in the way it handles files, but nothing major. So we're greeted with our backstage right here. And on the very left-hand side, you'll see all of the recent information that I have opened previously. Below there, you'll see open other files, where we can open the files if necessary. On the right-hand side, in this little object window, you'll also notice that we have a blank database, a custom web application. Then we have a list farther down. What exactly are those, right? Those are what we call templates. And I always tell my students when working with this course, when you finish the course, yes, it's excellent that you can create a database from scratch. But usually in a working environment, time is money. So if you can find a template that you can modify relatively quickly and utilize for your benefit, don't create it from scratch unless you just want to. Utilize one that's already there. Now for us, we're going to be creating it from scratch. So let's go ahead and open a blank database. We're greeted with an open dialog box. We're going to change the first name, and I do recommend doing this for all of them. We're going to make it app126 underscore first initial last name. I'm going to call this virtual class 1. Mod 12. And you don't have to do that part. What you would do is you would have this say assignment 1 or assessment 1. And then I'm going to copy that. I'm going to save it under my course information here. And I'm going to just hit create. Am I going too far or too quick? Let me know. Okay, so what we're going to do next, I'm going to pause this right here because we're going to get back to it in just a few seconds. But before we do, I want to show you a small video that walks you through some of the key concepts of the database system.
Before we begin in Access, I think it's important to outline a few key concepts about what a database is and define some of the keywords we'll be hearing throughout the course. So what is an Access database? An Access database is not just a place to store your data, it's a tool for creating a custom application that wraps the entire interaction between you, your team, and the data. Access is a collection of tools that allow you to efficiently process data, moving it in and out of the database, maintain the quality of the data and ensure that it remains consistently entered and valid, gain insight into the trends, areas of opportunities, and performance metrics through a series of analytical processes, construct organized and detailed reports to help guide informed decisions, and automate tasks to help prevent processing errors and speed up workflows. Simply put, a well-crafted Access database can give you way more than you put into it. To do all of that, an Access database uses 5 main components. These components are collectively called database objects, and each has a unique role to play in managing your data. The first object is a table. Tables are where the data lives. They provide a structured home organized into fields and records. The next objects are queries. Queries are literally questions that you have about the data. Queries scour through your data table Further, this table won't grow very well. What if we wanted to add a fax number for one individual, or a second office number? We would have to alter the structure of the table to add an additional column to accommodate those types of changes. A relational database solves both problems. Unlike a flat file database, such as an Excel spreadsheet, Access organizes data into multiple tables that connect to each other through common fields called keys. Using the exact same data, we can organize our phone numbers like this, where we have one table that's just about people and another table that's just about phone numbers. By linking the two tables together with a key, in this case an employee ID, we can accommodate growth and prevent inefficiencies in our storage. We can easily add new people or additional types of contact numbers without altering the structure of the tables. We'll expand on all of these concepts throughout this course, and we'll be creating several objects in each of the 5 types, hooking them together to build a relational database that will efficiently store data, return answers to our questions, perform analysis, and generate reports.
Okay, so that gives us a little information. I'm sorry about the audio that cut out on me for some reason. I'll post a link, well, I'll try to post a link for that particular section. Okay, so we have a database that we've created, but we don't have anything in it just yet. The video talked about a second ago, it talked about relating two things together. Now let's go back to our Microsoft Word document and let's think about this for a moment. When we're relating two things together, we have to find a common denominator, something that is between the two, essentially. And a lot of times when you're building a database out, or when you're building out a database schematic, or what we call an entity relationship diagram, when you're building those out, sometimes there are pieces that you cannot add together. For instance, there's really no way that we can add a person to a car table. It just wouldn't make sense. And the reason I say that is there's nothing in the person's table that could potentially link us to the car at all. So what we would have to do is create what we would call a linking table or a third table. So let's do that. We're going to call this person car. I know it's going to sound odd, or you could say person's car. What you would do is you would have the VIN number, you would have if I can get this to work, there we go. The VIN number, you may have the person ID who bought the car. You may have the date that it was purchased, so purchase date. You may have purchase amount, and you may even have odometer reading at the time of purchase. So all of those link back. Now I added a piece in here that I didn't add to the person's table, and it's the person ID. Now The reason I would add a person ID, and I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to highlight, I'm going to take off the VIN number here, and I'll explain why. And I'm going to add in a car ID. And I'm going to add in a car ID here. The reason we would call this a linking table is we're linking the person table or the person's object to the car object. We're taking this information and flowing it from here to here and here to here. So let's just do this here. And then we're going to do that again. Okay, so now we have two things going into a person's car table. Now, how do we link these together? How do we say what they are? We do that through what we call a unique identifier. And I've highlighted the unique identifiers in yellow. The unique identifiers are what we consider to be our primary key. The primary key is considered the unique identifier because it can uniquely or distinctly identify a particular row or a particular record in that table, in that section. For instance, even though we have the social security number in the person's table, at some point in time, we might get the same social. If the database has been that long and someone has passed away and so many years later it's been reissued. Chances are that won't happen, but never happened yet, but we don't want to say that it can't happen or cannot happen. Just like in the car. What we can do for cars is all cars under the same make have, or the same manufacturer, have a model and a year. We don't have to reinvent that every single time. We can say Chevy Camaro 2001, 2002, 2003, all the way up to 2017. We can then take that information and we can correlate it by saying John Smith purchased the new Chevy Camaro 2017 on a certain date for a certain amount, and there's his VIN number. We can then link it back through what we call a foreign key. Now, a foreign key gets into a little bit higher complexity as far as the database system is concerned. What it does is it takes the unique identifier in the parent table, and these two, the person and the car table, are what we consider to be the parents of the person's car, because they come together and make that particular table. So it's called the foreign key. So we have foreign keys here, and I'm going to highlight these in green, because those link back to these two tables. So at any point in time, we can take this particular table, person's car, and we can figure out the person's information who bought it and the make, model, and year of that car at any point in time. That's what we call an entity relationship. because these objects are what we call entities. And these attributes right here are what we consider the relationship points. We can relate a person. Now that I've gotten it, I can actually go here. You can see that the person ID and the car ID match, or they should match in some way. Does that make sense so far? Okay, so now that we've got this information, let's take it and let's actually correlate it to our database. So I'm going to pull up the database again. And we're going to just take a look at this really quickly. At the very top, we have our tab or our ribbon. We have multiple tabs on the ribbon itself. We're going to be working with just about every one of these at some point over the next couple of weeks. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be working first this week with the tables section, next week with the queries, week 3 is forms, and week 4 is reports. So for this week, we're going to be creating multiple tables, and that's what you're going to have to do for your assignment and your assessment. So I'm going to show you how to do that based off of the ER diagram, or based on the information that we just collected. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go to Home. And you'll notice on the left-hand side here, we have a view. If you click on that view, you'll see a data sheet and a design view. Now, these two are very different. The data sheet view is what you're seeing currently, where it looks more like Microsoft Excel. Design view is a little more complex, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Before we can go into design view, we need to save this particular table. So let's go ahead and save the table as person and choose OK. You'll notice on the left-hand side, person is created. You'll then notice that we have our field name, our data type, and our description. Now, there's multiple different data types that we can talk about over the next couple of weeks. We'll be using, if you're using 2010, you will not see a long and a short text. You'll just see text. That's okay. Don't worry about that. You'll also see number, date and time, currency, auto number, which is what I'm about to talk about, yes or no, which is a Boolean style value, yes or no. Let's go into the auto number. Auto number is unique, and the reason it is you do not have to submit, or you do not have to create the number every single time you write a new record. It does it for you. You don't have to worry about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this one person ID. And you'll notice to the very left right here, you have a little key. So what does that key actually mean? If you look up to the left, primary key is highlighted. This is our primary key field. It's the unique identifier for our system or for our table. So let's continue filling this out. It's going to be first name, last name, middle name, address, city, state, zip code. Actually, I mistyped that one. Zip code, phone number, email, social, and I'll tell you about that data type in just a moment. We're going to leave the driver's license off. We're going to do date of birth. I'm going to change this data type to a date. Now, why did I choose short text instead of a number for the social? The reason I didn't is if you put in a social security number that starts with a 0, for instance, like this, and I don't know if this is an actual social. If you put a social in like this, what will happen in the database or in the table when it's created, it'll actually remove that leading 0 automatically. So you actually have an incorrect social. So if you add it as a short text or a text field, it does not remove that leading 0. Okay, so we have that created. Let's go ahead and save it. So we go to File and Save. Now we can go ahead and close this particular section, or we can go up to View and go back to Datasheet View. Now we have our grid style layout, and we can fill out our users. So let's go ahead and do that. You'll notice under the person ID, it says New. Watch what happens when I fill out the information for this user. I'll say first name is going to be John. Notice how the person ID automatically changed to a 1. Watch what happens when I do the same thing for Sarah. It changed again. It automatically increments every single time. So this one's going to be Smith, Roberts. I'm going to leave the address, the city, the state, and the zip. I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to do the phone number. I'm going to leave his email blank. Social. And his date of birth. You'll notice when I click date of birth, this little icon shows up. Let's change his date of birth to, let's go back to November 25th, 1961. And Sarah's going to be born April 14th, 1980. Her phone number and her social. So now I have their information. And now what you would do is go to Save. And you've saved that record. What we would do next is go over to Create, because we're going to create 2 more. We're going to go to Create in Table. Now I can choose either Create Table Design or Create Table. I'm going to choose Table Design to go back into Design View immediately. So this one is going to be ID. It's going to be Auto Number. And this one's going to be Car ID. It's going to be Make, model, year, okay, so we can't use year, so we'll call this year. The reason we can't use year is considered a reserve word. So I could, yeah.
Manufacturer date.
Thank you. Manufacture date. That's not how you spell manufacturer. It is, okay. So manufacturer's date, engine type, color, and we're going to leave brake system off for now. So we've got color, engine type, manufacturer's date, model, make, and car ID. Now we have to add a primary key to that. So let's go ahead and select car ID, because we want that to auto-generate every time. And I'm going to choose primary key. That automatically adds that primary key to that particular table or that particular record. So now I'll go to File and Save, and we'll call this one Car. You'll notice on the left-hand side, it automatically created another table, Car. So now we can go into View, and we can create our brand new car. Make is going to be, I'll just say Chevy. Model is Camaro. Manufacturer's date is going to be 2017. Engine type, green. Ford, F-150. 2012. V6. Let's go with Chevy. Silverado. I missed it. 1500. We're going to make this one a 20. 16. And that's going to be, to make that in a V6, right? Let's make it a V8. So we have three. We have 2 users and 3 cars. Now what we need to do is we need to link those together. And the way we would do that is we're going to create a brand new table. We're going to go to Create, Table Design. We're going to call this one the VIN number. That one is not going to be an auto number. That's actually going to be a short text. Person ID. Actually, that's going to be a number. The car ID. That's going to be a number. Purchase date. It's going to be a date. Purchase amount. And we have 2 choices here. We can choose currency or we can choose number. I'm going to choose currency. And then we're going to have odometer reading. And that's also going to be a number. So we're going to go ahead and add the VIN number is going to be the primary key. And then we're going to second. We're going to go to File. And save. We're going to call this one person's car. And hit OK. So now we have 3. Now we can relate those together. Let's go into here. And we're going to randomly generate it. It's going to be person ID is going to be 1. Car ID is going to be 3. Purchased it on November the 1st. And they purchased it for $38,000. Odometer reading was 1,500. Let's do another one. Person 1 again is going to buy the first car. They're going to have bought that one February the 13th, 19. Actually, I can't. 2013. And they're going to buy this one for $45,000. And there is only 2,000 miles on that one. Cool. Okay. And we're going to do one more. Person number 2 is going to buy car number 1 today for $42,500, and there was only 500 miles on that one. And we're going to save it. So go File and Save. Now that we've gotten these related, what we can do is go into Database Tools and click on this little Relationships tab. A Show Tables dialog box will pop up, and we're going to select all 3. You'll notice all 3 show up. We can expand the person's window to see it. Now, we're going to relate these 3 tables together. And the way you would do that, click on the car ID and drag it over to car. Now, you're going to want to do what we call enforce referential integrity. Enforcing referential integrity means that if at any time the parent, which is the car, is deleted from the system, deleted from the table, it will automatically delete from the person's car table. Or if anything in the cars table is updated, the person's car table should be updated as well. And we're going to choose Create. Could not, okay. If you hit Create and you get this message, the database engine could not lock the table because it's already in use. Go ahead and hit OK. Hit Cancel. Close your table or close the relationships, and then close all of your tables also. Make sure you have a blank top. Then go back into Database Tools to Relationship. Select all 3. And let's try this again. So select cars, drag it to car ID, enforce referential integrity, and hit create. You'll notice that it created this little arrow, and it's considered what we call a relationship line. It means that one car can have many car persons. So each car can be bought multiple times. Or that car type can be bought multiple times. Under the person's ID, we're going to select the person ID and move over to the persons table. We're going to enforce referential integrity again and hit create. Now, we will go ahead and hit close, and we're going to save that layout. Now, if I go here to the person's car table, you'll notice I still have my 3 here, but if I click on cars, I'll have these little bitty expansion windows. With that expansion window, what that means is if I select that Chevy Camaro, I can see exactly who purchased it and for how much. Or if I go here to the persons table, I can do the same thing. You see how that works? Do you have any questions on creating 3 tables and adding an entity relationship so far?
Nope.
Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to show a couple of videos that will help solidify what we've been talking about, and it'll go a little bit farther in depth. But before I do that, this is all you really have to do for the assessment for this week. Create 3 tables and link at least 2 of them together. Now, I do need to mention for those who are going to be watching the recorded session, make sure that when you create your tables, that you add data information, that you add the actual information to the tables. Because if you don't, there's really no way for me to know if you've actually done it correctly. So make sure you add information. And I know I'm going to get some questions about how much do I need to add. I'm going to leave that up to you. You can add 2 or 3 per table. You can add 10, 20, 30 per table. It's completely up to you, whatever you want to put into it, as long as I can see that you've put some into it. As far as the assessment goes, the assignment goes, all you'll be doing for that is going in and making modifications to an existing database table. So if you don't have any questions, I'm going to start the videos, and I'll be here if you need me. So give me 2 or 3 minutes to start those.
Tables provide the foundation for any good database. And the success of a database, how well it functions and how flexible it is to future growth, often comes down to the structure of tables that house your data. Understanding how tables function in Access is a key to creating a well-structured database. Tables in Access follow a very strict model. Their horizontal rows are called records. Records are an unbroken chain of properties that describe a single entity. For instance, in an employees table, you would have a record for each individual in the company. Fields are the vertical columns. Each field in a table is a single property that is being tracked for each record. Each field can hold data of a single data type. You can choose to store short text, which is up to 255 characters, long text with a maximum character limit of 65,000. This is useful for comments or memos. Numerical values that you perform mathematical calculations with. These can be set to integers only or can include decimal values. Date and time, or currency values. Auto number fields create an incrementing serial number field that Access creates for you when new records are added to the table. Yes, no is a binary field. Can be yes or no, true or false, or on or off. OLE object is an older format used for attaching files such as images or Word documents. If you need to attach files, I recommend using the newer and much more efficient attachment data type. Really, the OLE object data type is just kept around for backwards compatibility and probably shouldn't be used at this point. If you'd rather not import files into the database, you could choose to use a hyperlink data type and provide a link to external content. This could be files on your network, email addresses, or locations on the internet. Finally, the calculated value creates data by calculating it from one or more of your other fields. And the lookup wizard will help you create a drop-down list to limit the available entries. In addition to the fields that describe each record's properties, we will also create fields that link tables together. Previously, I've mentioned that Access stores data in related tables. Because of this, each record in the table needs to be uniquely identifiable. In order to ensure that this is the case, we'll create a field specifically for this purpose called the primary key. The primary key is typically a serial number or other unique identifier. Think about how many unique identifiers you have for the various databases that you personally appear in. You probably have a driver's license number, a library card number, a social security number, a checking account number. The list goes on and on. The reason all of these systems use serial numbers instead of just your name is so that they can guarantee a unique individual. It wouldn't be very nice if one Mary Smith had to pay a fine for another Mary Smith's overdue library book, just because the library couldn't tell them apart. The primary key will also be our link to finding related records in additional tables. In the related table, they will be called the foreign key. The process of breaking your data into related tables is called normalization. Normalization rules fall into several categories, called normal forms. Your database is said to satisfy the first normal form, or 1NF, if all of the cells contain only a single value. Rather than have a single employee name field, we should break that into separate first name and last name fields. Breaking addresses into separate street, city, state, and zip code fields is another common example. The second normal form states that only data that is dependent on the primary key belongs in that table. We wouldn't want to store information about the customers each employee has helped in the employees table. Instead, we should create a new table that describes the interaction between our employees and our customers. The third normal form states that data that can be calculated or derived from other fields should not be stored in the database. We wouldn't want to create a field for employee initials, for example, because we can easily calculate them by taking the first letter from the first name field and the first letter from the last name field. Tables are where your data lives and are the foundation for your database. Creating a strong foundation as a base, then growing your database on top with the addition of queries, forms, and reports will mean your database will be able to be flexible and efficient.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we could hear it.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure.
When creating a place for our data to live, we will define the columns or fields that will house the data. Remember that in a properly normalized data table, the fields will represent the smallest piece of information possible. So instead of a single name field, we'll instead break it out into a first name, last name, or even middle name, suffix, and prefix fields if needed. Let's create a table to hold information about the No Obstacle Company's customers. Now there's a couple of different ways to create a new table in Access, all of which can be found in the Create tab. Here in the Tables group, this SharePoint option will create tables on a SharePoint server. The other two options are what we're looking for. We can create a table in either Datasheet view, this option here, or in Design view with this button. Let's start creating our customers table in Datasheet view by clicking on the Table button here. Access will create a new table for us and sets up the first column named ID. If I click on it, I can take a look up here in the data type to see that that is an auto number field. The auto number field is a serial number that Access creates for us automatically. Now, I want to be specific about what type of data this field is holding. So instead of just ID, I'm going to name it Customer ID. I'll double click on the text ID to rename it and type in Customer ID. Go ahead and press Tab to move to the next field. The next field is going to be our first name field. It's going to be text, so I'll choose from the list short text and then give it a name, first name. Go ahead and press Tab or Enter to move to the next field. And this time, I'm going to keep my hands on the keyboard. I can use the up and down arrow keys to move through the list of available options. I can move from short text to number, currency, date time, yes, no, lookup and relationships. I can choose rich text fields, long text fields. I can choose to attach files in this field or create a hyperlink. And finally, I have some options for calculating fields. I can also press the underlined letter to jump straight to a field. So for instance, if I want to go back to short text, I'll simply press the T key. Now we'll give it a name. This is our last name field. Notice that when I'm naming my fields, I'm not using any spaces here. Now Access will totally allow you to use a space in the names. It's okay with that. But as a standard user interface convention, I tend to use camel casing, which means all the words run together and we capitalize the first letter of each new word. I'm sure you'll find the convention that works for you. As long as you're consistent, that's really all that matters. Let's take a look at the ribbons now. Notice that while we're working with the tables, we've got two new tabs up here at the top. They're under the Tables Tools group. We've got Fields and Table. Within the Fields tab, we have groups to add new fields here, add and delete. We can change the properties for our fields here. We can change the formatting for those text fields, and we can set up some validation rules. I'm going to add another field here for my phone number. Now you might think that you're going to use this number button here in the Add and Delete group to add in the phone number field. But a phone number is actually going to be added as short text. Phone numbers aren't something that we're going to be mathematically calculating or deriving from. You're not going to add two phone numbers together, for instance. Plus, for a phone number field, we want to store the parentheses and hyphens, the punctuation marks. Remember, short text can be good for alpha and numeric data. I'm going to press that button, and it adds a new field over. Now we can give it a name. I'm going to call it Customer Phone, and press Enter. Now I don't want to add any more fields here, so I'm just going to go ahead and save the construction of my table. Up here on the Quick Access toolbar, I've got a Save icon. This is purple disk. I'll go ahead and click that, and it brings up the Save As dialog box. You can also use the standard Windows Control-S shortcut key to bring up the Save As dialog box. We're going to go ahead and give our customers table the name Customers, and press OK to save it. You'll notice that that updates over in the navigation pane on the left. Now our database is beginning to take shape. We have a table created where we can begin to collect information about our customers. Access created a primary key for us with this ID field, and we added 3 text fields to hold the last name, the first name, and the customer's phone number. Adding new records to your database is as easy as filling in the blanks. Each record or horizontal row will contain information about a single entity. In our case, the customers table will collect information about our individual customers, with each row containing information about one customer. Let's start to put a couple of records into our database. I'm going to open up the customers table we created in the last movie. I'll double-click on it in the navigation pane to open it. I'm going to add 3 new customers here. The first field is the customer ID. That's the auto number ID field for our customers. If I try and type something here, I'll get a warning beep and a message down along the bottom that says that the control cannot be edited. It's bound to an auto number field. Access is going to take care of the serial numbering of all of our customers for us so that we don't need to keep track of that. I'm going to press Tab to go to the next field, the first name field, and enter in Evan, our first customer. I'll press Tab again to go to the next field. This is our last name field. His last name is Santos. I'll press Tab one more time to get to the phone number field, and I'm going to type in his phone number, 383 835-9398. When you get done entering the record, you can press Tab one more time or press the Enter key to move down to the next record. And we'll start entering in our second customer. I'll skip the ID field, press Tab again. This customer is Micah Harvey. And Micah's phone number is 564-618-7716. When you get done entering that record, press Return or Enter one more time. Our last customer is Dante Levy, D-A-N-T-E. And Dante's phone number is 636-920-1555. Now, if you want to move back and forth between a record, you can press the arrow keys to move left and right, or up or down to move around in your records. We can also use the buttons down here at the very bottom of our table to navigate through the records. I have options to go to the first record here, or go to the last record. I can move back and forth single records by pressing the previous record button or the next record button. In the middle here, we have the current record indicator. This information tells me what record number we're on in the table and how many total records there are in the table. Right now it says 3 of 3. I'm on the third record of 3 records in this table. This last button over here with the yellow starburst will jump us to a new blank record. Now, we only have 3 customers currently. If I wanted to add a fourth, it's really easy for me just to go to this fourth line and start typing it in. But imagine you have a table with 10,000 records in it. Pressing this button is a shortcut instead of having to scroll all the way to the bottom before you can enter in your new information. We're going to talk about the filter and search boxes in a later movie. Now, it's worth noting here that Access is saving all of these record entries automatically. As soon as we finish typing in one record and move to the next, Access saves that record to the database, so we never have to worry about losing data. The only time you need to save the database is when you're making changes to the structure of it, to the design of tables or forms or their connections, for example. Whenever you're strictly entering or modifying the data that lives in the database, you don't have to think about saving. Your data will be safe and sound in the Access file. I can go ahead and close the customers table, and you'll see that Access doesn't prompt us to save. If I double-click on it to open it again, you'll see that our records are there safe and sound. Now, once your tables are created, entering data can be as simple as typing into the blank cells. Later in the course, we'll see how we can add additional controls on these cells to help prevent data entry errors, such as typos, and help automatically control formatting, such as automatically adding the parentheses around our area codes in the phone number field. We also saw where to look to get some basic information about the contents of our table, such as the currently selected record and how many records it holds down here. Anytime I open up a new table, my eyes instinctively flick down to this little box for a quick and easy summary of the contents. In a well-designed database, you'll create many tables that relate back to records in other tables. If you have data that isn't specifically about the primary theme of the table, it's probably the case that it should go into another table. For instance, let's suppose we want to store credit card information in our database. Here's a couple of questions that you might ask when determining where to store the credit card data. Does the credit card number describe our customer? No, not really. Will every customer want us to remember their credit card number? Probably not. Will some customers have multiple credit cards on file with us? Yeah, that's a possibility. So credit card numbers are not specifically about a customer. Some customers won't have any, and some customers will have many. All of these answers lead me to conclude that customer credit card numbers should be stored in a different table from our customers. Let's create a new table to store credit card information and then create the hooks to be able to tie it back to specific customers. From the Create tab, I'm going to go and press the Table button. I'm going to add the fields for card name, card type, card number, all of those being short text, and then we'll add a field for expiration date, which will be a date time field. This first one, I'll double-click on ID and change it to Credit Card ID. I'll press Tab to go to the next field and press the T key to select short text from the list. This is our card name field. I'll press Tab again and press T again for another short text field. This one is our card type. Tab again and T again. This is our card number. Tab again. This time I'm going to choose the expiration date. That's a date time field. I can go down with the arrow keys or just press the D key to select a date time field. And this is expiration date. We'll also need to create a way to tell us what customer this credit card belongs to. We could put a name field, but what would happen if we have two customers with the same name? How would we know which of them this credit card belongs to? This is why we have a unique primary key in each table. We can make use of them in other tables so that we'll know exactly which customer each credit card belongs to. This is called a foreign key in the credit cards table since it tells us who each credit card belongs to. Create an additional field named Customer ID. I'll press the Tab key here. And this is going to be a number field. So press the N key and type in Customer ID. We can rearrange the position of our columns by clicking on the name. I'm going to press Enter to finish that, and then click on that field to highlight it. Now I can drag it to whatever position I want. Typically, a foreign keys might appear towards the beginning of our table, but it's not required. But I can click and drag to the left to reposition this field. I'm going to place it right after the credit card ID field. Also, while we're here, we can realign the widths of our columns. Simply double-click on the edge between two fields to adjust the width of the column on the left. I'll double-click here so that credit card ID fills out, and double-click here for customer number and expiration date to make those fields wider. I'm going to go ahead and save this table now by pressing the Save icon or pressing Control-S on the keyboard, and we're going to call this Customer Credit Cards. Once you get that typed in, press OK, and you'll see it show up on the navigation pane on the left. Now let's start filling in some information to see how the foreign key fields work. Back in the Customers table that we filled in the last movie, we put in 3 customers, Evan, Micah, and Dante. Evan is customer ID number 1, Micah is 2, and Dante is 3. Let's create some credit cards here in our Customer Credit Cards table. I'll click back on the tab to switch back to the other table. Now let's say Evan and Micah, that's our customers 1 and 2, don't have any credit cards that they want to save with us. Dante, he's our customer number 3, and he has 2 credit cards. We'll fill in the credit card table like this. The first credit card will have a record ID on its own. This again is an auto number field that Access will take care of for us. The customer ID, this is who this credit card belongs to. This credit card belongs to Dante. He's our customer ID number 3. I'll press Tab to go to the card name. This is a business card. So I'll type the word business here. The card type is a Visa, and I just noticed I have a typo here. So I'll double click on card tile and rename that to card type and press enter. All right, so that's a Visa card. I'm going to go ahead and type in the card number here, 4826 0526 8582 0623. And I'll press Tab to go to the next field, the expiration date. And I can type in the expiration date, or I can use the calendar picker. Since this is a few months out, I'm just going to go ahead and type it, 10/31/2013. And press enter to accept those changes. I'm going to double click on this line between card number and expiration date one more time to expand the width of that column to accommodate the entire credit card number. Now we're going to type in another credit card for Dante. Customer ID, well, that's the same. It's still customer ID number 3. This time, this is a personal debit card. It's still a Visa card, and it's got a number here. And the expiration date for this card is 3/31/14. So notice that the structure is very flexible and efficient in allowing us to create one, many, or no records that are related to each customer. And the order that the cards are entered doesn't matter. If Evan, he's our customer ID number 1, decides later to put in a card, that's completely fine. It can go anywhere in the table as long as it is tied to his customer ID. So let's put one in for Evan. Customer ID for Evan is 1. This is his airline rewards card. It's a MasterCard. The number here is 5275 6787 1289 1613, and the expiration date is 2/28/15. Adding foreign keys to your tables is just like adding any other field. The important point to keep in mind is that the data types must match. This means that if you're using an auto number field as the primary key in one table, then the foreign key in the related table must be a number field. As long as the data is the same, you can use one as the reference to look up information in the other.
All right, so I hope that helps solidify some of it. That's really all I had for today. If you have any questions or concerns at all about anything for this week, please don't hesitate to give me a call or shoot me an email. if you don't have any questions, I guess I'm going to hang around for a little bit longer, and then I'll see you all next week.
I did have one question. I have had a few classes where the textbook was posted in weird places.
Mhm.
And I couldn't find a textbook. Is there a textbook for this class, or is it all the videos and the PDFs that you've posted?
For this course, it should be all of the PDFs, all of the links and videos. So if you go to readings and videos,
Mm-hmm.
everything you need should be right here.
Okay, because I've had some of them be put in the modules. Some of them be put right here. Some of them be put somewhere else. In one class I had where the teacher actually emailed us the PDFs for the book because for some reason it didn't get put on the website. So
Wow.
yeah, so I wanted to check with you before.
Yeah. We're trying to standardize all of that and make it one flow, one thing. So yeah, over time it'll get better, but until then, we're just gonna have to. We just have to keep doing it this way.
I just figured it was better to ask and get the right answer than just guess.
Yep, I'm glad you asked because somebody else may have that question too. All right. Well, you have any other questions?
Nope, that's it. I believe I've already completed my assignment and turned it in. I was going to start working on my assessment here right after class.
All right. Well, if you need me, I'm going to hang around for a little bit longer, and then I'll be signing off in just a little bit. All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Bye-bye.